Hi, I'd just like to share my experience of a recent photo shoot I did. It's a bit of a one-off family group photo shoot. This isn't the way that I'm going to continue with my photography. I've done about 20 years of family photography, and as much as I've enjoyed it, I would like to explore different things now, but I couldn't resist doing this for this lovely couple that I know. So here we are, and we started outside in the trees. I always think it's nice to just warm up a little bit in some natural light. So we went outside in the garden and took some shots underneath the trees here. A fairly flat light on that day, I suppose. And I think sometimes it's really difficult to find a balance between getting the shot absolutely technically perfect and capturing a moment. And I've always found this a bit of a balancing act, because the more you sort of faff with people and trying to get them to stand in the perfect position and get them looking situationally perfect, the more rigid they can actually become. So I really try and kind of step back and let them be quite natural, almost as if I'm not there, and then capture from a bit of afar. So that's what I was doing. I was stepping back a little bit, trying to get in the right position, moving them when really necessary, but trying not to sort of interrupt the moment too much. I'm really into this whole square crop at the moment, and I did that quite a lot within this photo shoot. And funnily enough, when I went to the photography show yesterday at the NEC after this shoot, there was a talk by a gentleman who crops square and actually just shoots square all the time, and he had a whole talk on why he does that and how you can kind of break the rules, and it really resonated with me. And it was so interesting that I listened to that talk just after doing this photo shoot, when I felt particularly drawn to cropping square. This picture I love, but this was, again, I was trying to remove the branches of the tree and get them out of the way and get into a position where they weren't distracting, but without spoiling the moment, because as you can see, Tom and Ella are really smiling naturally at each other here, and that's quite difficult to create sometimes as a photographer, particularly if you don't know the people. You've got to really gain their trust and create an atmosphere for them where they feel relaxed enough to be themselves. You know, they've travelled maybe quite a long way, they've had to get the baby ready, there might be a level of stress when they get there. So you've really got to try hard to relax your clients and give them an ideal situation where they can really be themselves and then capture that. So this little branch that was in the way was particularly frustrating, because I really didn't want to ask them to move and miss that smile. But as you know, your eye is drawn to light or bright areas, so anything light and bright like this can be really distracting. As you can see here, I did edit the little branch out. And now we're going to go swiftly into the studio. Here we are with the black backdrop. So I started with no flash in the studio, because when we first started, the baby was asleep, and so I didn't want to wake him up with a flashing light. So we started with just continuous light. It wasn't tungsten lighting, it was my strobe lights, just really nice and close to the subject. So I personally quite like a little bit of mystery in a shot, but I think in this case, some people might like to see a little bit more hair light in this image. So it could have potentially been improved with a hair light, which might have cast a little bit of light on the baby's face as well. I quite like directional lighting and shadows and dark areas, so it's a bit of personal preference really. So I put this image in black and white as well, which I love. I am a bit of a sucker for black and white, and the thing that I like about the ones with no flash is that they've got a nice softness to them. So obviously a baby's skin is particularly beautifully soft, isn't it? And you've got quite a nice roundness still with the lighting here. So it's not completely flat because I've positioned the lighting to one side. So you've still got a nice roundness to the faces, but you've also got that nice soft look. Again, here you could argue that a hair light would bring a little bit more detail into the hair, but on the other hand, the dark hair kind of gives it almost a bit of a vignette feel in that area. So it pulls the eye in and keeps your eye on the faces and the facial expressions, which is quite nice. Okay, so then we tried some flash on the black backdrop. I think it's easy to feel like you're racing against time when you're photographing a baby, because you're always wondering when they will have had enough and start crying. So without excusing the slightly iffy lighting here, that was what was going on. I was kind of dashing around trying to make it work and get it done swiftly for my clients. But I mean, this shot I do like, but I'm just a little bit aware that we've lost Tom's chin in the shadow there. And as you can see, the expression of little one isn't perfect. And I think that's just really one of the key things when you're shooting families, is to really keep an eye on what's going on the back of your camera after each shot, to make sure you've got eyes sharp, eyes open or closed or however you want them, and the expressions right before you move on. It is easy to feel rushed and pressured and move on too quickly before you've got the shot that you want. So just keep an eye on what you're doing and what it's looking like. So as you can see here, again, there's a bit of a shadow on Tom's face because the light is situated behind the baby, so the baby is shadowing Tom's face. Of course, it's possible to lighten this on Photoshop, which I did. I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I come up against in the studio, so it's not all edited perfectly, and then you can see the troubleshooting that I went through. I did loads on the white backdrop, and I love these shots, and this really highlights one of my challenges, I suppose. I take so many pictures and I've got so many different variations of a very similar picture, and then it's really hard, isn't it, to choose which ones to give to your client, because actually sometimes less is more. If you've got lots and lots of pictures all looking very similar, they kind of lose their impact and their value almost. But if you've got less, when you're looking through them, you kind of just, you value each one because it's rare. It's, you know, if something's not rare, you don't value it as much, you know. So it's sometimes difficult to delete them and know which ones your client's going to prefer, but without giving them too many. So as you can see, there is a little bit of flare in Ella's hair on this shot. Please stay tuned because I'm going to show you a really good trick in the studio to avoid this flare. It's really easy to get the flare like that when you've got a little bit of bleed from a white backdrop, but there's something great I'm going to show you very soon. So as I say, please hit subscribe and stay with me. I did manage to edit the images so you can't see the flare. We can always increase the contrast in that area, as you can see here. And because I took so many images, there were lots of different ones, and some of them had a little bit of flare and some of them didn't, so it all was fine in the end. As you can see here, again, I've cropped this image so many different times, and you end up with so many variations of the same shot, and you're never quite sure how close, what the client's going to want on their wall. So it's a really good idea to maybe sometimes have your client over and go through them together and discuss this, just so they don't wonder why there's so many pictures all looking very similar.